We'd been driving in the country for quite a while when we finally found the old dirt driveway that led to two very large, dilapidated barns. We were very apprehensive about what we were going to find in those barns. We had a pretty good idea about what to expect. We steeled ourselves and we got out of the car and we went to the barn on the left and we went in. And what we saw was row after row of cages. Cages for as far as we could see in these massive barns that were filled with dogs. Dogs that were sad and depressed and heartbroken. A judge had ordered all of the dogs in this puppy mill to be sold. We had enough money to buy 125 out of 800 dogs that were in these barns. We were there that day to take out 125 and to leave the rest. Those are decisions that haunt my dreams even today. The man who owned this puppy mill, he had lost one of his arms in a farming accident. So he would reach into these cages, these massive cages filled with dogs. He would reach in and he would grab one of these dogs by their leg and he would carry them around by their legs. We would run and grab each one of these dogs and we'd run out to the cargo van that we had outside waiting to carry the dogs away that we were able to save that day. As each of the dogs came out, the farmer's wife would be taking the chain off of their neck and she'd be giving it back to the farmer. We got all 124 dogs out. The last dog to come out was a little black and tan dachshund. And the old farmer woman, she was trying to get this chain off around the dog's neck, and she was tugging on it, and she couldn't get it off. And I could see that this chain had grown into this dog's neck. And she's yelling at her husband, "Come yank this chain!" And I'm looking at this dog and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know how bad this is, but I do know that that is really gonna hurt if they pull that chain out of her neck. So I grabbed this dog and I held it next to my chest and I ran. And I kept running and they were calling after me, come back, and I just kept going. In the United States, the United States Department of Agriculture requires that dogs in puppy mills be identified in one of three ways. One of those ways is that you put a chain around their neck with a metal tag. And when you no longer have the dog, you give the chain back to the United States Department of Agriculture, and they will give you your deposit back. Those people, they wanted their $2 back. We got the 125 dogs out. We got them to a temporary shelter where they were going to stay for 3 days until we were able to send them to a no-kill shelter in Nebraska, Hearts United for Animals, where they would have been cared for and they would have been gotten great homes. We got the black and tan dachshund to the vet right away. It took 4 hours of surgery and 72 stitches to take that chain out of her neck. It had grown into her skin, into her muscle, into her veins. If they had ripped that chain out of her neck, she would have bled to death. Each of those 3 days while we were waiting to send the dogs to the shelter in Nebraska, I went out to this temporary shelter to take care of the dogs. And that day, the last day, they were going to leave that night at 7 o'clock. That day I was there in the morning, and I was helping to take care of these dogs. And I was in the building, and these people start running into the building, and they're crying, and they're shouting, and they're saying, a plane hit the World Trade Center, and the buildings have fallen. And they're saying all these things, and they're talking, and I'm saying, my son, my son, my son. I had talked to my son the night before. He was doing a deal with a law firm that was in the World Trade Center, but I could not remember whether he was going to that law firm that day or whether they were coming to his law firm in Midtown. And I called him, and I called him, and I called. Redial. And I kept calling him. I called him for hours and hours. And finally, I thought, I will go home. I've got an answering machine at home. I will go see if there's a message on my answering machine at home. Well, this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've got to get these dogs packed up and on their way to Nebraska by 7, and it's an hour and a half for me to get home. I drove home. In the driveway, I slammed that car into park. I didn't even shut it off. I ran into the house, past my dogs. My dogs, when I come in the door, my dogs are like, oh, she's home. And I'm like, past them. And they think, oh my God. I can see them, and just barely from the side of my eye, I can see them standing there looking at me like, what has happened? I'm up the steps to my office, to my message machine. There's no message. It was like being hit by a truck. I stood there. I couldn't breathe. I don't know how long I stood there. I went back down the steps to my kitchen, and on the counter in my kitchen, there was a note. It was from my boyfriend. And it said he'd talked to my son. My son had called him. When he hadn't been able to get a hold of me, he called him, and he was safe. I slumped onto the floor in the kitchen, howling. A sound that I had never made before. I don't think I'll ever make again. It was some ancestral cry of pain. I wasn't happy because I knew how many mothers that day did not get a call from their children, but I was profoundly grateful. And then all of my dogs piled on top of me and gave me kisses. So then I had to get back out to the shelter, and I had to get these dogs ready to go to Nebraska. Got out there, an hour and a half, got them all packed, got them on all these cargo vans. We have lined up a caravan of vans taking these dogs from a Pennsylvania puppy mill to Freedom in Nebraska. And we got them all lined up, and the dogs are happy. Dogs know. They're so smart. They know for the first time in their lives something good is coming their way. They're going to happiness. So this whole caravan of vans set out that night at 7 o'clock. That evening, we get a call from the van drivers, and they said that as they crossed through Pennsylvania and Ohio and Illinois and Indiana and Iowa, that there were people standing along the roadsides holding homemade signs that said, "We love America. We love New York City. We are brave. We're strong. We will survive." And I thought of that little black and tan dachshund. She had a scar around her neck that she was going to have for the rest of her life, but she was headed to freedom, and she was strong, and she was brave. And just like this country will carry the scar of that day forever, we are strong, and we are brave. Thank you.
Okay.